Imagine for a second that you wake up, you pour your morning coffee, and someone just walks up and hands you a hard drive.
Just right there in your kitchen.
Right in your kitchen. And this hard drive, it contains the complete, unedited source code to the entire universe.
Okay, wow. That's a heavy delivery for, like, a Tuesday morning.
Right. I mean, every physical law, every historical event, the blueprints for every star, every living cell, it is all just sitting right there in your hands.
Which sounds amazing, obviously.
It does, but there is a catch.
Yeah.
Because you open the files and you realize you have absolutely no idea what language any of it is written in.
Ah, right. It's just gibberish.
Completely. You have all the data, but zero comprehension of the actual meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And, that scenario is essentially the modern human condition.
It really is. It's the defining paradox of the information age, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because every day you look at your phone and you are just hit with this staggering avalanche of information. I mean, we sequence genomes, we capture the afterglow of the Big Bang, we map out the quantum states of subatomic particles.
We've basically compiled the ultimate cosmic database at this point.
Exactly. But if you stop and ask the simplest question, like, okay, so why are we actually here? The database just kind of spits back a 404 error.
Right.
And it can leave you feeling incredibly overwhelmed and, frankly, a bit fragmented.
Yeah, we possess this unprecedented mountain of how, but we are just critically starved for why. We've mapped the physical mechanics, but the context, the actual meaning of all this data, it just keeps slipping through our fingers.
Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking a truly wild source document today.
Yeah, this one is... it's pretty out there, but in the best way.
It is. It's an excerpt titled 48th P Human Knowledge. And it features this incredibly dense AI-generated summary of a worldview or a philosophical framework known as the Way of POE. And our goal today is to explore one breathtakingly bold claim this text makes. Basically, the Way of POE argues that human knowledge has finally hit a critical mass.
That we actually possess the tools right now to answer the ultimate existential questions.
Yes. That we finally have the translation software for that universal source code I mentioned earlier.
Now, obviously, whenever a text claims to solve the fundamental riddle of existence, your default setting should absolutely be skepticism.
Oh, it's 100%. Metaphysical clickbait is a very real thing.
It is. But what makes this specific framework compelling isn't that it's offering like a neat little cheat sheet or some guru's platitude. Instead, it lays out a rigorous structural argument for why this exact moment in human history is fundamentally different from any other.
Right. It's not just that we have more trivia on Wikipedia.
Exactly. It argues we have crossed a distinct cognitive and technological threshold.
It really frames this moment as a clarion call for intellectual and spiritual exploration. So to understand why the Way of POE feels confident making such a massive claim, we have to look at the foundation first.
The raw data.
Right. The sheer volume of raw data humanity has unlocked just over the last few centuries. We've gone from making incremental, trial and error steps to these massive paradigm-breaking leaps.
And the text specifically points to 3 monumental breakthroughs to make its case here.
Right, which are decoding the human genome, probing the depths of the quantum realm, and mapping the cosmic microwave background radiation.
And the scale of those 3 achievements, it is really difficult to overstate. Because they effectively bound our physical reality.
How so?
Well, by decoding the genome, we mapped the 3 billion base pairs of DNA. We basically reverse engineered the biological operating system of our own species.
Right. Understand exactly how traits are passed down, how proteins are built.
Exactly. Then, by probing the quantum realm, we peered into the subatomic basement of reality, discovering this microscopic world that operates on, probabilities and uncertainty and entanglement.
It completely ignores the predictable rules of classical physics.
Totally. And finally, by mapping the cosmic microwave's background, we captured the thermal radiation left over from the very early universe.
We are literally looking at the echo of the Big Bang.
Yeah. We are mapping the shape, the age, and the composition of the expanding universe.
Okay, let's unpack this setup, because it feels like humanity has finally collected all the ultimate Lego blocks of reality, right? The genes, the quantum particles, the cosmic radiation.
There comes the but.
But here's where I get hung up. Let's take the genome. It is an incredible feat of biology, sure, But does knowing the human genome or looking at cosmic radiation actually tell us why we are here or just how we are built?
Right, it's the recipe, not the meal.
Exactly. It is syntax, not semantics. I mean, I can have all the letters of the alphabet, but staring at a dictionary doesn't tell me a story.
No, it doesn't.
Does knowing my genetic risk for a certain disease or knowing that the universe is 13.8 billion years old actually inch us closer to understanding consciousness or free will? Because it feels like a strict materialist would argue that if we just get enough of this data, the how eventually explains the why.
And what's fascinating here is that the Way of POE strongly rejects that strict materialist assumption.
Really, so it agrees with my skepticism.
It actually aligns perfectly with it. It doesn't view these scientific milestones as the finish line at all. It views them as foundational constraints.
Okay, constraints, meaning what exactly?
Meaning science is a phenomenal tool for establishing the mechanics of reality. It measures, it quantifies, it predicts with just astonishing accuracy. But data alone is completely agnostic to meaning.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Think about it like this. A functional MRI can show us the exact neurological blood flow in your brain when you, say, eat a piece of chocolate or listen to your favorite song.
Right, the chemical map.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that chemical map does not explain the subjective feeling of joy.
Right. It is the classic hard problem of consciousness. You can map every electrical impulse, but it doesn't explain what it is like to be the person experiencing the impulse. It's like you have the world's most detailed map of a city, but that doesn't mean you know what the air smells like or what it feels like to walk down the street.
That's a great analogy.
So if science is just providing this hyper-detailed mechanistic map with no destination, where does this framework suggest we look for the actual instruction manual to interpret it all?
Well, it argues we have to drastically rethink our entire approach to knowledge gathering. For centuries, we have compartmentalized human inquiry into these rigid silos.
Oh, right.
Science is over in the laboratory dealing with objective, measurable facts. Philosophy is over in the humanities department arguing over abstract concepts like ethics and free will.
Usually we treat science, philosophy, and spirituality like they're sitting at completely separate tables in a high school cafeteria.
Exactly. And spirituality is often treated as this purely subjective personal wellness endeavor, completely separate from rigorous academic pursuit.
But POE is saying they need to pull their tables together.
Yes. The text refers to these divisions as artificial boundaries.
It is like trying to understand an ocean by putting the biologists in one room to study the fish, the chemists in another room to study the salt, and the surfers in a third room to talk about the waves.
And forbidding them from ever speaking to each other.
Right. You completely miss the ecosystem.
Right.
But I want to zero in on the spirituality aspect of this because the text makes a very specific and honestly kind of radical pivot here.
It does.
It mentions practices like meditation, mindfulness, and contemplation. But it does not treat them as tools for stress management or like ways to unwind after work.
No, it frames them as rigorous, vital research methods.
See, let me push back on that. Because are we seriously treating sitting silently in a room with your eyes closed as an equivalent intellectual endeavor to building a multi-billion-dollar particle accelerator? Like, how is mindfulness a research method?
If we connect this to the bigger picture and look at the underlying mechanics of observation, the comparison is actually quite robust.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about what a particle accelerator or a space telescope actually is. It's an instrument designed to filter out interference, so we can gather objective third-person data about the external physical world.
Right.
But consciousness, the very phenomenon that allows us to build those telescopes in the first place, can only be experienced in the first person. You cannot observe a thought from the outside.
Right, you can only see the fMRI blood flow, like you mentioned.
Exactly. So if you want to study the nature of the mind, you need a systematic, repeatable method for observing it from the inside.
Ah, so you have to build an internal telescope.
Exactly. When you strip away all the cultural dogma, what are millennia of contemplative traditions like Vipassana or Zen mindfulness?
They're methods.
Highly structured methods. For controlling external stimuli, finding silence, regulating the breath, in order to observe the raw mechanics of thought, emotion, and perception as they arise and fall.
Wow. So it's essentially thousands of years of peer-reviewed first-person data collection on the nature of subjective reality.
Yes. Science investigates the observed. Contemplation investigates the observer.
That completely flips the script on how we value knowledge. I mean, In a traditional scientific mindset, if something is subjective, it is inherently less valuable or less true than objective data.
But POE is arguing that because the universe and the human mind are intricately intertwined aspects of a single reality, ignoring the subjective experience is like trying to solve an equation while ignoring half the variables.
That is wild.
It is the core philosophical pillar of the text. You cannot divorce the observer from the observed.
Right. Quantum mechanics already hints at this heavily with the observer effect, where the mere act of measurement alters the state of a quantum system.
Exactly. And the Way of POE scales that principle up to a macroscopic level. It argues that if we are literally the universe experiencing itself made of the same stardust and quantum fields as the galaxies, then a complete understanding of reality requires synthesizing the objective data of the cosmos with the subjective experience of existing within it.
Okay, but synthesizing all of that sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare. I mean, you are talking about merging astrophysics, genomics, ancient philosophical treatises on consciousness, and thousands of years of meditative insights.
It's a lot of data.
A human brain literally cannot hold all those variables at once.
No, it can't.
But this is where the source text introduces the accelerator. It claims this convergence is not just some utopian idea for the year 3000. It is happening right now through entirely new interdisciplinary fields.
Like neurophilosophy and quantum biology.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because these fields are the literal dismantling of those artificial boundaries we just discussed.
Quantum biology is perhaps the most striking example of this. For decades, biologists assumed that the warm, messy, chaotic environment of a living cell was completely incompatible with quantum phenomena.
Because quantum stuff usually requires incredibly controlled, freezing cold environments to even observe, right?
Right. But modern research is completely overturning that assumption.
Give me a concrete example of how that works in practice, because quantum biology sounds like a buzzword from a sci-fi movie.
Okay, consider avian navigation. The European robin. It migrates thousands of miles with pinpoint accuracy. How?
Magnets?
Sort of. We are finding evidence that they rely on a protein in their retinas called cryptochrome. When a photon of light hits this protein, it creates a pair of entangled electrons.
Wait, entangled electrons inside the bird's eye?
Inside the eye. And the subtle variations in the Earth's magnetic field alter the spin states of these quantum-entangled electrons, which then triggers a chemical signal in the bird's brain.
So the bird is literally seeing the magnetic field through a quantum sensor in its eye.
Exactly. We are also seeing evidence of quantum coherence in photosynthesis, allowing plants to transfer solar energy with near-perfect efficiency.
That is staggering. The weirdest, most microscopic, rule-breaking physics of the universe are actively steering a flock of birds and, powering the trees outside my window.
The physical and the biological are deeply tethered.
But to find those connections, you have to be able to model incredibly complex biological environments against incredibly dense quantum mathematics. Which brings us to the technological engine driving this whole convergence.
Right, the AI.
The text argues that we are relying on artificial intelligence and quantum computing to bridge these gaps.
Because technology is acting as the great synthesizer. Human researchers simply do not have the cognitive bandwidth to cross-reference the entire human connectome, the map of all neural connections in the brain, with vast data sets of quantum molecular dynamics and thousands of years of philosophical text.
It's just too much.
But advanced AI systems excel at exactly this kind of high-dimensional pattern recognition.
And I find the paradox here absolutely fascinating. We are using the most unfeeling, mathematically cold machinery we have ever created. Silicon chips, binary code, algorithms to explore the most elusive, deeply human concepts imaginable.
Concepts like the nature of the soul and the essence of consciousness.
Right. But how does a machine learning algorithm actually help us understand a philosophical text about the mind? I mean, it doesn't actually understand the concept of a soul, does it?
No, it does not possess subjective understanding. But large language models and advanced AI, they don't read words the way we do.
Okay, how do they read them?
They map concepts as mathematical coordinates in high-dimensional vector space.
Vector space.
Right. By turning language and concepts into geometry, an AI can identify structural similarities across incredibly disparate fields. It can map the conceptual architecture of a 2,000-year-old Buddhist text on non-duality, cross-reference it with modern papers on quantum field theory, and highlight the parallel logic structures.
Wow. So it translates them?
The AI acts as a cognitive exoskeleton. It translates the objective data from the science frequency and the subjective insights from the spiritual frequency, finding the underlying grammatical rules that connect them.
So the AI is doing the computational heavy lifting, finding the hidden threads in the data so we can actually step back and see the panoramic view.
Exactly. It is processing the vastness of the scientific foundation
Right.
and applying the philosophical frameworks to it.
When you lay it out like that, it really does sound like we are standing on the precipice of a golden age of human understanding.
It is a profoundly optimistic vision of what technology and interdisciplinary study can achieve. However,
Ah.
this is exactly where the source text drops a massive caveat. And frankly, this pivot fundamentally redefines the stakes of everything we've discussed so far.
The warning about knowledge versus wisdom.
Yes.
And I will admit, when I was reading this section of the source, it stopped me in my tracks because we live in a society that is deeply, almost obsessively focused on data acquisition.
Oh, completely.
We operate on this underlying assumption that if we just gather enough facts, build a fast enough supercomputer, and solve enough equations, all of our societal and existential problems will just naturally resolve themselves.
We treat the evolution of society as an automatic technological upgrade.
Yes, but the Way of POE explicitly argues that knowledge alone is not enough. It must be paired with wisdom.
The text draws a rigid structural distinction between the two. Knowledge is the integrated map of reality. We just spent time discussing understanding the mechanics of quantum biology, mapping the connectome of the brain, utilizing AI to see the patterns.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. But wisdom is the ethical framework dictating how you apply that power.
Right.
The text defines wisdom very specifically as the capacity for deep self-awareness, active compassion, and a commitment to the betterment of the collective.
So let me play devil's advocate for a moment. What happens if we don't have the wisdom? Let's say we achieve this grand, unified theory of reality. We perfectly integrate science and philosophy. We have super intelligent AI. But we are still the same tribal, self-centered humans we've always been. Does the system just plateau, or does it actively fail?
This raises an important question, and according to this framework, it fails catastrophically.
Really?
The evolution of human consciousness is not a passive process. You cannot simply install an enlightenment patch into human society via a software update.
That would be nice, but yeah.
Right. If you arm a species with God-level technological power, the ability to manipulate the genome, control artificial superintelligence, engineer the quantum realm, but that species retains primate-level emotional maturity and tribalistic ethics, the result is self-destruction.
So what does this all mean? We could have the smartest AI, understand quantum biology, and meditate perfectly, but if we lack compassion, the whole system fails.
Wisdom must scale concurrently with our technological capability.
So in the context of the Way of POE, compassion isn't just a nice moral bonus or something you practice to feel good about yourself. Compassion is a structural necessity for the survival of an advanced civilization.
It acts as the containment field for our technology.
The containment field, I love that.
Precisely. And this ties directly back to the concept of breaking down artificial boundaries. The boundaries we need to dismantle aren't just the academic walls between physics and spirituality.
Right.
They are the psychological walls we place between ourselves and the rest of the world. If you truly internalize the core realization of this synthesis, that the universe and the mind are a single, continuous, intertwined reality, then acting with compassion is not just a moral commandment.
Just facts.
It is the only logical response to the physical nature of reality.
Yeah.
If everything is deeply interconnected, harming another part of the system is literally harming yourself.
That completely shifts the responsibility. I mean, it is so easy to look at the trajectory of the world and think, well, the tech billionaires in Silicon Valley and the quantum physicists at CERN, they'll figure all this out.
Right, someone else will handle it.
Yeah. But this framework puts the burden squarely on the individual. Technology can give us the vehicle and interdisciplinary science can get us the map, but human wisdom is the only thing steering the wheel. An algorithm cannot generate empathy for you.
Wisdom requires active, ethical participation from the human user. It is the daily grinding work of cultivating self-awareness. It forces us to ask not just what we can build, but what we should build. It is a reminder that as our external tools become exponentially more powerful, our internal ethical frameworks must become equally robust.
Which brings this entire massive, mind-bending conversation right back down to you, the person listening to this deep dive.
Exactly.
When you think about your own daily pursuit of learning, whether you are diving into a new subject to prep for a meeting at work, or you are just intensely curious about how the universe functions and you're listening to deep dives on your commute, it is very easy to view that as just a solitary hobby. Like you are just one isolated brain absorbing data.
But through the lens of the Way of POE, your individual curiosity is not isolated at all. You are an active node participating in this grand convergence.
Wow.
When you seek to understand the complexities of the world, and more importantly, when you strive to apply that understanding with empathy and self-awareness in your daily life, you are doing the critical work.
You are bridging the gap between knowledge and wisdom.
You are contributing to the creation of a more conscious ecosystem.
It really validates the importance of paying attention, but it also demands something of our character.
It definitely does.
We have covered some immense ground today. We started by looking at the sheer overwhelming volume of modern information and the incredible scientific foundation humanity has built. You know, from decoding the 3 billion base pairs of the human genome to mapping the cosmic radiation of the Big Bang.
We saw how that data provided the mechanics of reality but left us starving for meaning.
Right. And then we explored the absolute necessity of dismantling the artificial barriers between science, philosophy, and spirituality. We examine how treating the subjective mind as a rigorous laboratory through contemplative practices provides the first-person data needed to interpret our third-person scientific measurements.
We looked at the mechanisms behind emerging fields like quantum biology and how AI and quantum computing are acting as the ultimate translators, finding the structural patterns that connect these diverse fields.
And finally, we grounded all of that immense technological power in the stark reality that without human compassion and ethical wisdom, this unprecedented knowledge becomes an existential liability rather than an evolutionary leap forward.
It is a framework that embraces the full complexity of the human experience, but it leaves us with one final, deeply profound implication to consider as we look to the future.
What's that?
Well, if the core premise of the Way of POE holds true, if our human consciousness and the physical universe are not separate entities, but are truly intricately intertwined aspects of a single continuous reality, then when we use advanced tools like artificial intelligence and quantum computing to decode the cosmos, are we just the universe finally building a mirror to look at itself